So let's get going and make our own game. So I'm going to get rid of this on-click with the Kaboom logo. I don't want that. And the first part of the game is that I want our bean character to move around when I press the arrow keys. So first thing, now I've added the bean character to the game, but at the moment I have no way of referencing this or telling the computer that this is the thing I want to move, because all I've done is just add it and it's just sitting there. So to do that, I want to put this code into this player variable. So now I have a way to talk about this thing here. I have a way to reference it, to talk about it, to use it in the code. And it's with the variable player. So what do I want to do with variable player? Well, I'm going to use this code on key down. So that's when I press a key down or when I'm holding it down. And to start with, we're going to use the right, that means the right arrow key. So when I'm holding down the right arrow key, what's going to happen? Now, if this is your first time coding, this is going to seem a bit fiddly, how we have to type this. So I'm going to do brackets like that, and then this arrow thing here, and then these curly brackets, and then I'm going to press enter, and this is where my new code is going to go in here. So we've got on key down, which means when you're holding the key down. Right means the right arrow key, and this whole bit is a function, which is just a way of storing some code. It's called an arrow function, but that's something you can get into more details later. For now, it's helpful just to kind of recognize that we have some brackets, then this arrow, and the curly brackets, and then this one, you can see it's highlighted, so this matches this, this one matches this, the open and close, and these two are already matching. Sometimes you might have something inside there. You may have some other kind of variable or information. But for now, this is what we want to do. And then just to keep my code looking neat, I'm going to press tab to indent so that I'm not starting right there. So in here, what happens when I hold the right key down? Well, I want my player to move. So with Kaboom, we can simply type player move. But how should the player move? So we've got some brackets, and the first number you can actually see up here is the x velocity, or the speed on x, and the second number is the y velocity. So x is anything to do with moving left and right, just like the x-axis on a graph, and y is for up and down, like the y-axis on a graph. So when I hold the right key, I want it to move to the right. So that's the x direction, and it's positive, so I'm going to use 200 for x and 0 for y. Now I'm going to Control S, and again, a common mistake, you want to start playing your game, start pressing the right arrow key, but I'm still clicked in the code window, so I need to click over here. Now when I hold down the right arrow key, it moves across the screen. That's all I can do. I can't come back because I don't have any code for moving left, so pretty soon I'm going to be off the screen. So now I want to be able to come back to the left. So anyone who's getting into coding helpful tip is that you're probably going to find yourself doing a lot of copy and paste of your code or code someone shared with you online, or code that you found in a tutorial. So I'm going to highlight this, Control C, and then come underneath, Control V to paste it. And instead of going right, I'm simply going to change this to left. But this 200 needs to change. So at the moment, 200 means it's moving in this direction at that speed. If I want to come back in this direction, then I need to tell it to be minus or negative 200. Remember, you have to save, Control S, it reloads, click in the window. Now I can move to the right and to the left. So I can move right and left. Now what happens if I change this 200 to 400? Control S to reload. Now when I press the right arrow key, it's a lot faster. But the left is still at that 200 speed, but with the minus sign to tell it to come back in this direction. So you can kind of play around with the different speeds that you want. If I put it right down to something like 20 and save that and click over here, you can see how slow it is on 20, but that left speed is still at that 200 with the minus sign telling it to go to the left. So I'm just going to put that back at 200, and now we can move left and right at quite a reasonable speed. So this starts to show why I like Kaboom. With very little code, we've actually got some game mechanics going already. So for example, in Space Invaders, if you know that old game, then all you had really was left and right for movement, although that would have been at the bottom of the screen. We can look at how can we move our character to the bottom before doing any code for moving up and down. Well, we come back to this original code where we set up the player, and this position, again, it's 80 on the X, so that's 80 across, and the 40 on the Y actually means 40 down from the top. So if I change this to 140 and reload, we're now further down. If I change this to 180, it should be further in. Let's reload that. There we go. So I don't know if I put this, let's see, 240. It's at the bottom of the screen. And now I could be making a Space Invaders game with my character moving left and right. And to get that far, I haven't really had to do much code at all. We have our sprite that we've loaded in, then we've set it up here as a variable or an object called player, and then we have this code that's looking for the keys being pressed and is moving the player the way that we've asked it to. In this case it's 200 on the X and 0 on the Y. What would happen if I put a number here? Let's say 100 on the Y, and I save this. So this time I'm going to press the right key. Oh, again I've forgotten to click in the window, and it's now moved down and off the screen. Let's reload to get the character back. Oh, reload. And I press again, so it's moving 200 to the right and moving at 100 down. So it's disappeared off the screen. So most games you don't really want to move in two directions with one key. So let's set that back to 0. And let's do some code for moving up and down. So again, I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to copy and paste. and let's move, say, up. And this time we don't want to move on the X direction. We don't want to move left or right at all. We just want to move Y. So we saw before that when I had 100, that actually moves down off the screen. So I'm going to keep it to 200, but a negative 200 to move up the screen. So let's reload, and now I'm pressing up, and I've forgotten to press in the window again. Pressing up, so I can move right and left and up, but I can't move down yet. But you can probably see pretty quickly what code is needed if I want to move down. Change this to down, and now instead of negative 200, we change it to 200. Reload, click in the window, and now I can move in all 4 directions. And by pressing 2 keys at once, I can move diagonally. So now we have the basics of many games, moving a character around, up, down, left and right, in very little code, and in code that's pretty easy to understand. I think all these parts are easy to understand. I do know that all this weird stuff here with the brackets and this arrow thing, I know that probably doesn't make sense if you're new to coding at the moment. So for now, just have this as something that you recognize and get used to, and it's something that you'll understand later on as you go into more depth and see more examples of it. Probably the only thing we haven't really explained is this area piece of code here, and that's going to be used later. This means that our character has an area around it so that it knows when it bumps into things, so it can detect if it's collecting the apples in this game, or if it was being shot by an enemy in other kinds of games. So this area code means that this has some detection, some sprite collision, some way of knowing when it's touching other sprites and objects in the game. And that's going to be used a bit later on. Other than that, hopefully you can probably pretty much understand all of the code that we've got. And just to finish off this section, I'm just going to get rid of this burping code. As fun as it is, it's not really part of this game. And there we have it. Just refresh, and you've got a character moving around. And now this is a good piece of code that you can save and use again and again in many kinds of games.